Welcome to the Ambitious as Fuck podcast, where we have raw conversation about staying motivated and ambitious while facing real life challenges. Success doesn't just happen, you have to work hard, fall, and keep getting up regardless of the obstacles. If settling or giving up is not your style, stick around for this real ass conversation. My name is Priscilla, and I've always enjoyed helping and motivating others. While developing my own brand, I realized my passion for marketing and empowering others to keep pushing forward and manifesting their dreams. Thanks for tuning in. Welcome to another episode of the Ambitious AF podcast. Today I have a guest who I mentioned in the previous episode. We're going to have some fun conversation, very open, very empowering. Men can learn some stuff, women can learn some stuff, everyone can learn something. Jessica, can you please introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Jessica Aycock. I am a kink and sex personality coach. I am also a licensed mental health provider in the state of North Carolina. So yeah, let's talk about stuff.
So, okay, repeat the first part you said again.
So kink and sex personality coach.
What does a kink and sex personality coach do?
That is a great question. Some days I don't know what I do, but really it's just helping women kind of get in connection with themselves again in a way that really expresses their pleasure. I've found that women particularly get so disconnected from pleasure in any way, shape, or form. And so a lot of times we don't know what to do with ourselves. We don't know what we like. We don't know what we enjoy. We don't know anything about ourselves. And so it's this real process of kind of finding yourself again, so to speak. And a lot of the times that includes sexuality and exploring some kinks and I don't want to say dirty thoughts, but like those things that we don't
taboo.
Talk. Yeah, the things that we don't talk about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so I met Jessica at through a networking thing, just like I meet everyone. It's either I meet you on social media or I meet you at a networking thing. And Jessica has like a super cool vibe, and then I was like super interested in what she does, and I was like, yeah, I'm seeing this more now on social media. Like, I don't know how I end up on it, probably like empowering women and stuff like that. So anyone I've seen is a female, like kind of like, I guess one of the other ways, like just to easily refer to it like a sex coach, kind of, right?
Kind of, yeah. I feel like that might be trademarked, so I don't technically go that direction, but
yeah. So how did you get into this? Like what, because you said you're also a licensed therapist.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how did you walk us through this?
Yeah. So I have had quite the eclectic kind of journey in this way. So when I became a therapist, I realized that there were a lot of people who were coming to me who were talking about a lot of the more taboo subjects. So things like spirituality, sexuality, just in general, things that they didn't feel comfortable talking to general people about, right? Like, which is probably why most of us go to a therapist, because we don't feel comfortable talking to our close friends and family about certain things. But I started to find that there were always people who would get probably like 3-4 months in, and then they were just like, I really want to talk about my sex life and what's going on. And I'm like, okay, sure, let's talk about whatever. And I found that I've always been really kind of interested in the kink community, just non-traditional relationships, open relationships. It's all very fascinating to me. And I've dabbled in the community a little bit myself. And so it's always just been something that has kind of been in the back of my mind of, this is always a really interesting conversation, like relationships are difficult. And when you bring in another person or you add in this other layer of things, it can get really complicated really quickly. So I always just kind of liked that idea of talking about sex and different topics and just all of the things that most people find taboo to talk about in general public. And so I was like, well, why am I kind of not focusing on these things specifically? Why am I waiting for people to say, hey, I feel comfortable enough with you now to talk about my sex life? And why am I not just saying, hey, guess what? You can talk to me about sex. Let's do this. So that's kind of how that came about.
Okay. All right. So how long were you kind of like into your career as a therapist when you realized that something needed to change?
So I am, gosh, when did I get licensed? I am in my 7th year of being fully licensed. No, that's not true. 7th year post grad. So graduated in 2015. So I've been in the workforce essentially for 7 years, and so have been licensed for now 5. 2018, I think, is when I got licensed, fully licensed. And it was probably pretty quick after that, where I was like, wait a second. I would have people coming into my office even during my during schooling and stuff, and like doing my internships, and who would be, this is something that I really want to talk about. This is something that's, important in my life, or this is something that I've been struggling with. And I was like, okay, let's go for it. So it was pretty early on in my career.
Yeah, that's cool. The crazy thing is, like, do you think, because I'm always talking about how like kind of stuff happens for a reason a little bit. Do you think that if you hadn't got into therapy that this would have happened for you?
Mm-mm. No, I definitely think that I had to go through, because I have thought about this a lot. I am like, that was a lot of money to spend on graduate school and then to get licensed. And that was a lot, Jessica. And I don't think that I would have gotten to this space had I not done that.
Right.
I just don't think I would have had the confidence to be coaching anybody, to be talking to people about things, to feel like I had something of value to share with them. I think I really had to go through that process in order to feel like I can do this.
I love that, because it's like we can sit here and go back and like be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. But just to kind of like along those lines, because these are things I talk about. My husband has been building a business, but it took him a really long time, and he was being really slow on it. And him and I would kind of bicker, because it would be like, I'm working my ass off to build this brand of mine for the longest, and I haven't. It's not like the money came right away. There's still struggles, whatever. And so I remember like, you have clients waiting for you. That was the fight. You have clients waiting for you. All you got to do is start your business. But he wasn't ready then. And so now things are taking off because he took his time and he's now ready. And so it's like, no matter what I said, I couldn't have changed it. I couldn't have forced it a different way, because we are exactly where we're supposed to be through our experience, through everything that we go through, through our everything.
Yeah. And I fully believe that half of the people that I've worked with would not, like, I have one client at my work, and I tell her often that she's older, and she was just like, I've never thought about therapy, never wanted to go back to therapy, had a bad experience with therapy. And she was just like, and I just adore you. And I'm like, well, you were waiting for me to get here. Yeah. That's the whole thing. And so I fully believe that there's so many people that I've worked with that was meant to be that relationship. Like we were meant to be working together in that.
That is, I love that. And I'm just glad we can put that message out there, because it's like, hey, everything just ends up the way it's supposed to end up. So
definitely,
that's pretty cool. So let's see, how can we make this a little more interesting and change it a little? So I guess like when you decided you were going to do this, you decided you're going to work with women, right? And was that kind of like the majority of people that you noticed were the ones that were opening up about this at some point? Was it women? Do men do that as easily?
Men don't do it as easily. Just statistically, I end up working with more women in general. Statistically, men are, so I obviously I have less men to sample from, but it does take them longer. And I think, although I do have a couple that just come right out of the bat and they're just like, yo, this is the thing that I want to work on. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. Which is fantastic always. But I found that women are most often kind of seeking therapy in a lot of ways because they've lost themselves, right? So like when I first started kind of building this business for myself, I was really focusing on self-care. And I still believe that self-care is an amazing thing and it's very important. However, it's also become so freaking commercialized that it doesn't resonate with everybody. Like it's become this dirty word almost that people are just like, ugh, whatever, like fucking self-care. Like, yeah, okay. Because it doesn't
take a bath.
Yeah, right. And for some people, like they're like, it sounds like the worst idea possible.
That's
like
so true.
That just makes me cringe to think about that. And so my big thing, and this kind of segues into kink and whatnot as well, is your preferences are your preferences. And so if you're not comfortable with these things that people are saying are the normal, then fuck it. Let's do something different, you know, and let's embrace those different things as opposed to trying to fit you in a box that makes society acceptable. And so that was really kind of this where I was kind of how I kind of moved into that a little bit more as well. But what I was finding was like women are the ones who have been kind of conditioned to lose themselves in such a way that they don't know what they like. They don't know what feels good to them. They don't know how to find pleasure in anything because they're so focused on everybody else but themselves.
I kind of want to elaborate on how you say they lost themselves, but sometimes I kind of feel like we never even knew who the fuck we were in the first place.
Yeah. 100%.
Because like you said, we are, as little girls, we are conditioned a certain way. Like, make sure you pull your skirt down, make sure, you know, like, I mean, there's all these things that's just one stupid example, but like, there's just so many things that we are not allowed to think or feel or
express.
And so that I think that's a huge thing right there. It's like we don't even know who the fuck we are. Like you said, like we don't know what pleases us and all of that stuff. And so that is something you know how I the way that I relate to this, and because like I have to be careful because there's certain people that are listening to this podcast that know us intimately.
Right, no problem.
So I'm gonna keep it a little.
My friend says.
But when I was married the first time, there was a lot I couldn't express. And he had this certain perception, my ex, of like things that were very skewed because he had his own self-confidence issues, which I didn't realize then until now that I've gone through some healing work of my own. But I remember when I became single from him, I had fun. And here's something that I know like everyone can relate to. And I wish it wasn't called that, but it is the hoe phase, right? I think you posted something about that one day.
Probably. I love it, honestly. Like, go for it. Be a hoe. I don't care. Like, we have to have that experience.
You know, because it's like men do. We don't call them a hoe phase. We just say that's men.
They're bachelors.
That's fucking stupid. That doesn't make any fucking sense. And that's bullshit. So I'm just like, no, it's not a hoe phase. It's a phase where you are discovering yourself, right?
It really is. Absolutely.
Here's something crazy. Now, this one I am going to say because fuck it. So, all right. So during my singlehood bachelorette period, it was the first time that I had come and squirted, and I had no idea what the fuck that was. And I got so weirded out. I was like, that wasn't pee. I was like, I swear to God, I was mortified. But it's like, that's how little we know about our bodies as women. That
Yep.
the first time that happened to me, and I'm like fucking 28 years old or something like that, I didn't know what the fuck it was.
Mhm.
And that even goes to show that my ex didn't know how to fuck me.
Very true.
But I didn't know how to fuck either, I guess. So
Well, and there's gosh, there's just so much to talk about in this one like little snippet here of
yeah.
society sucks. And our education system sucks at teaching women anything about their body. We are full of shame in terms of anything that happens with our body. And there's so many things that we just don't know. We just don't know. Like it drives me insane in terms of women getting into their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s and not knowing certain things about their body. Like women who have never had an orgasm and they're too scared to touch themselves to try to figure out what it is that they like because it's been like beat into them
that it's wrong.
That it's wrong or dirty or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That reminds me of, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have watched Sex and the City where Charlotte they were like, you don't look at it, like,
yeah,
and you don't think about that. And I think at this point they're probably in their late 30s.
Yes, during the show.
Yeah.
I think maybe early 30s, maybe even.
Yeah, but I think that part might have been like later. And so, but it's like, how would we, I don't know, like, how would we know? Because, and I remember this is like weird, but I remember like, and I saw this on, I think there's a documentary on Netflix about our bodies. I forgot what it's called. But
somebody just told me about that and I haven't watched it yet.
Oh,
but
you should. Yeah, definitely. Everyone should watch that, especially if you're a woman, because you end up learning. That's honestly where I was like, oh, the vagina, the vulva. Oh, it's a vulva. Oh my God, how do I not know that? I felt like such an idiot.
Right.
It's my body and I don't know this.
Because we're not told these things.
Oh my God, it's so pathetic.
Or the amount that we're told is like a day's worth, like a 45-minute conversation in sex ed in 6th grade that everybody is like, okay, now it's over. Never talk about this again.
Right. Oh my God. Remember what was that one with Adam Sandler and the coach is like abstinence is the only, I don't know, some shit like that.
Was that Waterboy? Oh my gosh.
Waterboy. Yeah. But it's like, it's so funny because like, no, but it's sad. We can make fun of it right now, but it is really sad that because we really don't. And I said this as a prelude to today's episode. I'm like, we know more about a man's dick than we know about a woman's vulva and vagina and all the bits and pieces that go down there,
Yeah.
Why?
And unfortunately, like men know even less than we do about
true
a woman's body.
That's true. And that's like one cool thing I can say is like, so after my bachelorette time, I started messing around with my now husband, and it was so funny because one of the things that would kind of like just connect us was like sex. And as much as I like was trying to fight that, like that was like a really good thing. And I don't know, maybe that led to me falling in love with him more. I don't know. Like we already had a connection on other levels and stuff. Like I don't know if I've ever talked about it, but anyway, yeah. So it's like, but now it's like, I couldn't imagine being with someone that didn't know how to pleasure me. And if they didn't know, I would definitely the fuck teach them. But I wouldn't be this confident before.
Right.
Because I'm already 37. And it's like, I've been married now for, I guess, since I think we got married when I was like 29, 30, something like that.
Okay.
And I think I turned 30. And so I lost my train of thought.
You wouldn't have been confident back then.
Oh, that's right. I wouldn't have been confident back then to like really express that. I wasn't. It just happened and it was great. But now it's like, now that I'm older, I'd be like, oh hell no. Like if I had to start this all over again, like no. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
you're gonna learn.
And that's the hard thing too, is women are not taught how to teach.
Right.
Or how to express themselves in a way that says, hey, this is what I like.
Right.
Guys are told all the time,
Right.
you know, are very comfortable with saying, no, do this, no, do that, no, do this. But it takes,
or they just bob your head down on it.
right. Yeah. They're just like, they just force it or control it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But it is really, it's a lot, there's a lot of communication that has to happen for a real solid, satisfying sex life.
Okay, so let's get into what you do now, so because we're opening this up more. So like let's say like, so how does someone start telling you like, or how do you tell them like this is what you should do to get pleasure? Like how does that work?
Mm-hmm. So just like if somebody were to come to me and say, I don't know what feels pleasurable.
I don't know how to have an orgasm, or I don't know how to tell my partner, like how do you help them fix these problems?
Well, everybody's individual, everybody's different, so it's always a different approach, but in general it's becoming comfortable with what it is that you enjoy. So if you can't tell me what you enjoy as a non-involved person, you're not going to be able to tell somebody else what it is that you enjoy.
Okay.
So it's a lot of like individual self-exploration at first, and getting comfortable with, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and being able to say those things. Because if you can't say it out loud, then you're not going to be able to tell your partner what it is that you like.
Right.
And then anytime it comes to having a conversation with your partner, I always, always, always recommend having a conversation that is not connected to sex at all. That is 100% like just, hey, like I'd like to have a conversation about, intimacy, or what I like during sex, but it needs to not be during sex. It's like, it's really kind of a difficult conversation to be having when you're in the moment, because it's like you're so worried about having the conversation that you're not enjoying yourself. So even if they do get it right, you might not have the good reaction, right? Because you're still so focused on, how am I saying it to somebody?
Yeah.
So take the pressure off and just have a conversation, make it a date night type of discussion, where you can sit down and say, hey, like, these are some things that I really kind of want to try, or these are some things that I would like to explore, and have it be a conversation that then allows you both to explore it, as opposed to, you're doing it wrong, do it this way, right? Because that doesn't feel good either.
Right. So we shouldn't listen to that one song by Timar. You guys are gonna have to look it up, or maybe I'll throw it in the episode when it gets edited. But the song is awesome, because like she's like, no, you're doing it wrong. Like she's like hurting her. She's like, stop.
Okay, I agree with that. If that happened, if you're being hurt, then yes, say stop. Consent is everything.
That's so funny. Okay, so then that's great advice, because I know like recently I had a conversation with my husband. It just happened organically. We didn't even plan it. I didn't even plan it. It just happened. We're talking, and it was like, okay, well now we're talking, so let's keep going. And it just opened up the floor for so much more to talk about. So that's actually really helpful.
And I want to just clarify one other thing with that, is to not spring it on your partner of like, hey, I want to talk about sex, like right now, like, or, you know what I mean? Like, give them some time to like formulate their own thoughts on it as well. So, hey, like, this weekend, can we like just have a discussion about like some fantasies or things that we may want to try in the bedroom, and then let them kind of bring something to the table as well.
Okay, that's cool.
Because we've all been in that situation where your partner is just like spring something on you that they've been thinking about for 3 months, and you're just like, what is happening right now.
That is, yeah, that's true. That's true. It's like almost like it comes off as an attack, perhaps.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's very good advice. So if someone, okay, so let's just say someone just really can't get themselves to like get it out, like spit it out and talk about this, like what happens then?
Mm-hmm. So I feel like that is where we would go back to more just individual work in terms of, okay, well, what is like that? Yeah, I feel like that ends up going back to this shame aspect of like, why do we feel like it's so difficult to say these things? Like, why do we feel like we maybe don't deserve to have the.
So then it's a little bit of like a little psychology, kind of like some therapy kind of stuff where it's like there's some other type of blocks going on.
Yeah. It doesn't necessarily have to get into like the therapy side of things in terms of really processing like past trauma and stuff like that. But we can have a discussion about like, okay, I have trouble saying the word pussy because that was like a dirty word when I was growing up, or like that's just not the word that I would want to use, or you know what I mean? Saying like there's all kinds of different things that keep us from being able to express ourselves. And so, yeah, like whatever mental block is there, it's now working through, okay, what is because a lot of it is shame, you know, like that's the ultimate emotion that's kind of holding us back, or fear. Yeah. And so it's processing and kind of working through like, okay, why do we feel like this is a shameful thing? And there's a little bit of like, okay, kind of owning that, you know, because a lot of times it's well, I feel like I'm going to be, you know, classified as a slut or a whore or whatever. Like that's not something that good girls do, or whatever is going through your head. And there's a little bit of like, okay, well, you know what? Let's own the bad girl vibe. Like, let's step into that and like just own it, as opposed to feeling like it needs to be this side that we don't get to share with anybody.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Basically, I think it boils down. I thought I had do not disturb. That's funny. That's okay. When you said it kind of boils down to shame, that actually makes a whole lot of sense, because there is like, oh my God, what's he gonna think, or she, you know, because it's not necessarily exclusively male and female situations either.
Right. Yeah.
So that's an interesting, have you ever spoken with like a same sex, you know, someone who's in the same sex, or, you know, okay.
Yeah. And it's really universal, honestly. Yeah. It's again, what did we kind of grow up thinking was okay and not okay? And a lot of it is kind of dismantling a lot of the ideas that we grew up with of what's okay, what's not okay. Right. And not, I should say, what's normal, what's not normal, I guess, maybe, or
quote unquote. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's really hard, because I'm just like, well, nothing is normal and everything is normal. And
that's so true. Yeah.
It's really preferential, like each person is individual, and what one person thinks is kinky is another person's absolute normal, like this is my everyday kind of thing. Right. So it's
right. So kind of like you described the self-care thing. It's like, okay, self-care, the bath bomb, the this, the that, right. That's like the typical thing that's been commercialized. But then, you know, there is the other self-care, like having just time to like explore your body, or, you know, whatever it is. Like there's just so many different ways to take care of yourself. Some people, I know someone who's like, my self-care is hiring a house cleaner so that I don't have to clean.
Like, heck yeah, I did that. That was the best self-care I ever did.
So yeah, it's like getting out of this like bubble that we're in, because oh my gosh, there's this book called The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. You've read that one.
Yep.
A lot of people have read it. I highly recommend that to anyone who hasn't read it yet. But I mean, he talks about how we have been conditioned, and by our upbringing, which is like, it's everyone's own dream, kind of, we're all living in our own dream. Yeah. And so it's like, then we start judging other people because of what was in our dream. And that's where we have all these issues. And so it's like, once you start realizing like, I'm not stuck to this, I can actually do whatever the fuck I want, then it just like becomes this whole new world. And then you realize, well, that person can do whatever the hell they want to, and it has nothing to do with me. So, okay, cool. Everyone do whatever the fuck you want.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And also like not setting your expectations for things on other people. I think that's a huge one too, is, you know, we grow up with, and this is why I fucking hate labels. Like I really freaking hate them. You know, boyfriend, girlfriend, like whenever you use those words, husband, wife, you know, even partner, whenever there is some level of expectation of what that other person is supposed to be doing for you or with you or whatever. And so societally, we have created this construct of expectations that are surrounding all of these labels of who this person is to you. Family, friend, you know, whatever, best friend. Your best friend is supposed to be XYZ. Your family is supposed to be XYZ. And when they don't match up with that, it's a fucking shit show. Right?
Yeah.
So it's deconstructing these ideas of like, what are the expectations that you have for your partner, and how can you lower them to a level that is achievable by them and still satisfactory for you, you know, and is individualized to each person, as opposed to this blanket, oh, well, if you're married, then you're supposed to be doing this, and you're supposed to be doing this, and you're supposed to be doing this. Like, it's fucking shit.
Yeah, that's very true. So what about like when you're working with a client, like, do you ever recommend that they use toys, like, because it's like, how can we know what to do if we're not really trying? So like, what does that look like? What are you recommending with the self-care?
I mean, honestly, it's like so self-care is such a weird thing, again, because it's like so individualized.
Right.
So honestly, I always recommend people make a list for themselves of things that, if they don't know what they like, things that they think they may enjoy, or things that, and so anything that they're watching TV, or they're reading a book, or they're out at the mall or whatever, and they're like, oh, that looks like fun, or that looks interesting, put it on the list. Because you don't know what you like or you don't like until you try it. And so when we have then a moment to be all like, okay, I need to, because we all get into that space where we're like, I know I need to do something for myself, but I now can't think of anything that I can't think of anything because it's in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Now you have a list. So go back to that list, like roller skating, you know, like, oh, that sounds like fun. Okay, we'll go get some roller skates, you know, whatever, like anything really.
Right.
And so that can extend into, you know, the bedroom as well. You know, like if I have a kinks checklist on my website, and it's, again, like, this sounds like fun, this may be something that I'd be interested in, or absolutely not, this is like 100% a no, or this is like, oh yeah, I really love that, I know I love that. And then you get to start playing around with the maybes, the yeses, like all of those things, to figure out what's going to work best for you.
Yeah. That's awesome. You have a kinks checklist on your website, you said. That's awesome. That's probably like, let's open up those ideas, right?
100%. And like, it's really funny because when I was creating this list, I was trying to be very like beginner friendly, and there are some people that I've kind of given it to who are just like, Jessica, that's a little extreme. And I'm like, you should see some of the other ones that I was basing this off of, that I was taking ideas from, and that I was like getting inspiration from, because those are extreme, sweetheart.
Oh, wow.
But again, it's everybody's perception and their comfortability is different. And so, I try to make it very, very beginner friendly, but there's going to be things on there that maybe you don't know what they are and need to Google, and then are like, absolutely not. That just happens.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's helpful. So, all right. So then right now, I kind of want to talk about like the business side of things.
Sure.
because I think a lot of my listeners, I'm pretty sure it is, they either want to start a business or they are in business and, need encouragement, whatever. Um, what do you feel has been the hardest part of starting this kind of business? Because this is not your traditional, this is not typical, like, how do you market this? Like all this stuff. Like what's been this the hard part for you of doing this?
So there's two things I would say. One is one is my own thought process on or what it should be, right? Like I have my own expectations of what I should be doing or how this should look like or who I should be working with. And I think right before we got on the call, I said, like I have an identity crisis at least every 6 months of like, I don't know what I'm doing. I do know what I'm doing, or this doesn't feel right anymore. Let me change to this. So I feel like so sometimes I feel like I can't make up my mind, but I also feel like that is probably one of the hardest things for me is like, I can't, or I haven't, I do narrow down a niche and then I like start to be like, ooh, well, maybe this kind of like shiny object syndrome sometimes. So that's a big part of what has been really difficult for me is sticking with something. Although it's all very similar, like all of it is very similar. It's just a little different.
Because you bring this up, this in particular is like so near and dear to my heart because anyone that knows me well enough knows how many fucking times I've changed, like kind of, it's still the same thing, but it's like, how am I directing it at people? Who am I talking to? And that's like, it's not pitching, but that's literally what I am like trying to help people do. And so I'm like working on some content that's going to help people figure out who they're talking to. Right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But one of the things that happens is when you're first starting off, that's not where you're supposed to end up.
Mm-hmm.
And you're supposed to keep growing and you're supposed to keep getting clearer and clearer and clearer. So the only advice I can give you is that is part of the process of your growth, and that at some point it's gonna feel right, and it might be there for like maybe a few years, and then all of a sudden it's gonna feel different again.
Right? Yeah.
So like, don't be so hard on yourself for that.
I'm trying not to be.
Because here's the good thing is that you keep changing it. I actually see that as a better thing. Because it's like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. So that's what I would do. I would change it. I'm like, this doesn't feel right anymore. I got to keep changing it. And I think it's up until now, and this is how fucking like open and honest I'm being about it. I've been studying marketing and copywriting and all that stuff for like 5 years now. And I've been helping other people figure this out a lot faster than I can do it for myself. But that's also the hard part too, is when you're doing it on your own. Yes. So because it's like, it's so hard to pinpoint because we have so many thoughts in our head about what we're doing that it's hard to pinpoint which one we're going to focus on. So therefore, when you get the opportunity, getting some help from someone, not saying to work with me, but like just someone that can help you in this space. So,
right.
And that's for all of my listeners too. It's like at some point you need to get someone to help you, because I had to like break down and say, fuck that, I don't know everything, I need some help, and just get help from whoever I think is a good source to help me.
Right. Yeah, definitely. 100%. And I completely agree with you too. And that's why I have kind of like continued to evolve and change and things, which I find highly entertaining, because there are times when I'm looking back at like some of my content from like last year or the year before, and I'm just like, oh, Jessica, you were so in like the thick of just the like self-care bullshit. And again, not that it's like bad, like, because I do think that it was important, and I do think that it is important, but like I feel like I was just feeding into the like commercialization of it, and I'm just like, yeah, no, we ain't doing that shit no more. We're just gonna be like fucking real about it.
That's awesome that you say that, because then you start, realizing you need to be more true to yourself instead of like going with the crowd. And that's like one of my things. It's like, yeah, we don't got to do what everyone's doing. Actually, the more unique you are, the better, because then that makes your offer like completely different than someone else who does something similar.
Right. Not only that, but it's the growth process for me in terms of, yes, all of those things were like that I really truly did believe in at the time, like, and it did feel good, right? And it did feel aligned. And now I'm kind of going, okay, it doesn't feel aligned anymore. I still think it's important, but this is why I think it's more important now,
That's
and it's like
awesome.
instead of going through the, okay, well, do what makes you feel good today. It's the no, 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 like do what actually makes you feel fucking good today. Do you know what I mean? Like two completely different versions. Sometimes I feel like the like villain in the self-care industry right now. Like the like,
Wow.
ooh, let me just go in here and just mess it all up because I love it, but I also hate it, if that makes sense.
Mhm, mhm.
The second thing I would say
Yes.
that's most challenging is this is not something that people like to talk about. And so it's very difficult to have people kind of, it takes a long time for people to even come to me to be like, okay, I need some help. So it's a lot of very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't want to say unappreciated, but just like there's a lot of content that gets put out, but not a lot of response or not a
Uh-huh.
lot of
Engagement.
interaction.
Mhm.
And so that can be very challenging at times too, just because it's like, okay, is this landing right? Are people like liking this? Is this the right stuff? It's very hard to judge sometimes where I'm landing, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. And yeah, it's like, and I like in the previous episode, I was talking about how, as business owners, like we feel kind of alone sometimes. We feel like,
Yeah.
oh my God, like how come somebody else looks like they're doing so much better or whatever? Like, what am I doing wrong? Or nobody else is going through the growing pains of being broke. Like everyone else is making six figures supposedly. Like,
Right, right.
you
Yes, absolutely.
and so it's like, so then it's kind of hard to talk about these things too, because then it almost feels like, well, should I, like, should I really share this with somebody who's going to
Hmm.
listen to me? Stuff like that. So it's like, you're definitely not alone because I know we've all felt that. And just, I thank you for being open about that because I think people
Yeah.
need to realize that they're not alone. That's the whole thing.
And that is what keeps me going. Everyone's like, I'll take breaks sometimes. And sometimes it is really hard to kind of like come up with content because, of course, in my head, things are so uh
It's so clear. It's like, you
and
get
it's
it.
so normalized to me that I'm like, I don't like this is stuff that everybody knows. And everybody's like, no, Joss, it's not. And I'm like, oh,
It's not. It's
my
not.
bad.
But this is awesome because I think, I really do. I want to empower people to just like become their best selves. And if we're not being pleased in some way, then it's going to show in a different way, whether we even
Yeah.
realize it or not.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And there's
um,
so many ways to find pleasure in the world right now. Like it doesn't have to be sex. It doesn't
right.
have to be a romantic relationship. It doesn't have to be an intimate conversation or anything like that. But even I would challenge just people to find something that they find pleasure in it every day. Like even if it's your favorite cup of coffee or, the sunrise or your dog being adorable or your child's laugh or whatever it is, like starts to really pay attention to what are those things and how does that actually feel? Because I think we have become so conditioned that we don't even know what pleasure feels like anymore. It's like a foreign concept.
Because we're just like, sometimes we're just on autopilot doing the shit we got to do. And like, that's
Right.
it.
Yeah.
And so,
Everything with intention has to be everything with intention.
exactly. And that's like through the healing that, that I've talked about on the show a lot of times, and I keep bringing it up. I'm probably always going to bring it up because
Mm-hmm.
it's so important that we get to that point where we are aware of ourselves and we are actually in the moment and understanding what we're thinking and what we're feeling. And so, like you
Right.
said, it's not just sex, but like now that we've brought this up to my listeners, like maybe it's something to think about,
Yeah.
And so it's like, yeah, I want to help people like just open up their minds to the possibilities of like awesome in everything. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your work that you're doing.
Thank you.
I definitely want to talk to you some more later.
Of course, anytime.
And is there anything that you would tell people, like, I mean, is there anything that you want to kind of like a message that you want to put out there in particular, like while you have the stage right now?
Oh gosh, that's so much pressure right now. I think it would just be, be fucking selfish sometimes. That's the message I want to say. Be fucking selfish sometimes, because you have to be. Like, you really have to be.
I love that, because you even said sometimes. You're not saying always.
No, not always.
Love it.
Let's start with a little bit at least.
That's awesome. And you know what? Thank you for that, because I think, we're just again, I think women more so we're so used to like making everyone else happy that we don't even know what's making us happy. So yeah, right. Being selfish sometimes is okay. Definitely. Yeah. I love it. All right, Jessica. Well, thank you so much for being here. And on social media, what is your handle? I think I love your handle.
It's just my name, the Jess Acock. Everybody, like, I have had so many people who have sent me messages and they don't realize that Acock is my last name, the Aycock. They call me Jesse. Like, my first name is Jess A.Y., like Jess.
And your last name
is Cock. And I'm just like, nah, guys, that's not how it goes. But
okay, cool, then it wasn't the handle. You call yourself Aunt Jess.
Aunt Jess, yeah. So like, think of me as your cool aunt who you can talk to about anything and who's actually going to steer you in the right direction and not give you any like sugarcoating bullshit.
I love that. Yeah, when I saw Aunt Jess, I was like, I like this. This is so cool. I love it. Like, yes, there are certain aunts or uncles that you can kind of talk to about anything. So that's really awesome.
Yeah.
And if anybody wanted to reach out to you, what is the best way to reach you?
Probably on my Instagram, the Jess Acock. You can always, oh my gosh, on my website as well. You can always reach me there.
What is your website?
thejessacock.com. Like, I am super simple. I try to keep it really easy.
Spell it again, just one more time, just in case.
Sure. TheJessAYCOCK.
All right.
Yeah.
And any other place to reach you?
Instagram is probably where I spend most of my time. Great. And there's a link tree. This is one thing that I will say. In my Instagram bio, there's a link to my link tree. And within the link tree, there is a space to ask an anonymous question. And so you can be literally completely anonymous. You can ask anything that you want. There's no, well, I would have to pay in order to be able to see, and I'm cheap, so I'm not going to do that. But I won't know who it is or what you're saying. But if you send me a message or have a question or anything like that, please know I will never out you in any way, shape, or form. If I use a response that comes in through my Instagram, it's only, you are the only one who gets notified that I made the response. It doesn't tag you in anything anywhere. So please just know, like, that is something that is very important to me, is confidentiality. And so I will not like tag you in anything or out you in anything unless you want me to.
Okay. So. Awesome.
There's a place to ask anonymous questions.
That's so cool, because hopefully you guys take advantage of that. Because I always tell people, hey, email me. I'm so happy to talk to you, but they don't. So anonymously, hey, that's pretty cool.
Yep. 100% anonymous.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the show. Thank you so much for giving us something refreshing to talk about.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I always love talking about this stuff. So really, anytime.
All right. Sounds good. I'll probably have you on again soon.
Awesome. I can't wait.
All right. Bye, everyone. Have a great day. For more tips and motivation, check me out on YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok at AmbitiousAF.